Beautiful. We are live for another episode of the Blue Crocus Experience, and I'm joined tonight by Travis DeVries. Now, Travis will introduce himself here in a second, but we met at a birthday party, I believe, a couple of years ago through some mutual friends. Got to know each other. He was here in the city that I live in. They've since moved to the province of Prince Edward Island, the tourist province that steals all of our tourists here in New Brunswick. But we're going to chat a bit about consistency. You know, there's some contracting stuff in here because Travis was previously doing mainly roofing. He's doing a lot of home building stuff now, so we're going to dive into that. But Travis, if you want to give a brief background of who you are, you know, where you grew up, what kind of led you to where you are, and we'll just dive into the conversation.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So my family is from Prince Edward Island. That's where I grew up, and grew up, went to school here, and ended up eventually went to university, to UPEI, for biology, which is probably the furthest thing from what I'm doing right now, in a lot of ways, but in some ways not. Ended up meeting my wife. We met, we dated, we got engaged, and we eventually got married while I was still living in PEI. So she was from Ontario, so she moved here, and it was. I still had back then. I had a dream of being a teacher, so I moved to Fredericton, New Brunswick, to go to school there, and we had plans to move right back, but we ended up kind of setting up. We had our first child there, and we decided to stay for. It ended up being about 10 years. We lived there. We started. The company that I now operate, Fresh Homes Construction, we started that there. We had our second child there, and we just kind of made a home for ourselves there. And I guess it was probably about 2 years ago now, we started having discussions about moving back, and we did that in December last year. Moved back to Prince Edward Island, and we just started building a home while COVID struck. Or just the beginning of that, and that was kind of a crazy process getting that house built. But anyways, we got through that. We finished last May, and we continued the business here. So I've got the same business. We just transferred it over to Prince Edward Island, and things are going really well with the business, and the family is kind of all adjusting to life here. I'm a little more used to it, but they're all making friends. There's lots of family around. We're on PEI. We're really enjoying that, and lots of other stuff going on too. I made a few commitments this year to getting fit, and started doing some triathlon, and that's kind of where the consistency comes in. So
excited to dive into that. I do want to. What happened between teacher to starting a roofing company? How did that happen?
Right. Okay. Yeah. I guess I kind of glanced over that.
Yeah, that was a pretty fast sentence there.
Yeah. So we'd been married for 3 years. We wanted to have kids, and I had just finished my Bachelor of Education, and I was kind of excited. I was going to go and teach, and I was just. Right around that time, we found out that we're going to have a baby, and I started looking into the teaching, I guess, the marketplace, and realized that there was some tough competition to become a teacher, and the path that most people took was to be a substitute for like 3 to 4 years. These are the stories that I was hearing, and and subbing like maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 days a week. And just trying to get a permanent sub position, and maybe after a couple of years, maybe you could get a full-time teaching position. So I, knowing that we were going to have a baby, and with funds kind of running low, like I needed some work, some reliable
substitute teacher work.
Yeah, so I kind of put the teaching on hold. In my mind, it was on hold for a little while, and I got a job with a friend of mine who had a construction company. And we worked away. We had a good time, working together. And eventually I ended up going to school, to NBCC. I went I took a couple of week program to finish up my apprenticeship in carpentry.
Okay.
And it was great. It's a great program. It was offered by the college, but it was the government would pay. They were paying for the program at the time,
Gotcha.
trying to get more tradespeople in into the workforce, and so I took advantage of that and got my red seal in carpentry at that point.
Gotcha.
And yeah, so I kind of did that over the winter, and then the next spring I was I was thinking, well, there's only a few months left in the school year. Maybe I'll just go back to carpentry for a bit, and that's probably where I'll be for the summer. And so I did that. I worked for a guy, and I ended up running. He was kind of doing a bunch of different stuff. He himself, the owner of the company, wasn't a carpenter at all, and so he had hired a few of us. But I realized very quickly that among the 12 guys who were working for him, I was the only carpenter on staff, and so I get put in charge of a rather large project. We were putting decks on a big condo building, and I was in charge of probably 6, 7, maybe 8 guys at a time, and I was ordering material and dealing with the building superintendent, and back and forth with the suppliers and the crews. And anyway, I ended up doing all of this and getting paid, I guess what you would expect to get paid. But I realized, I'm not getting paid as much as a business owner.
Yeah.
I'm doing all this work, and I'm taking all this stress on me and kind of taking responsibility for the project. And I said, this is crazy. Like I'm working away, and I'm getting really nothing. I'm not reaping any of the profits off this job. And so I gave my notice to him. I told him, I was going to start my own. In fact, I had started my own business while I was working for him, just doing things on the weekend. And so I told him that was closer to the end of the summer. I told him, I was going to finish the project with him. I felt like I needed to commit to that. And then I said, after that, I'm going to go out on my own. And so I think he understood. I think he certainly wasn't a carpenter, but he was, he was a good business guy, and he knew the situation. So that was great. He had kind of, he kind of offered what he could, and even kind of gave some tips on how to, on what he was doing for running a business. So that was great. And then so I started actually the company was called, I think I called it like DeVries Carpentry or something, and pretty, it took a lot of imagination and ingenuity to come up with that. But we changed it later when we kind of had a bit more of an eye towards home building, to fresh homes. That was a tough old sled that first couple of years.
I was going to ask, how did you, where were you getting jobs from? How was it? Was it everything you thought it was going to be?
No, I mean, it was just, I was like, you do those calculations and you figure well, if I get this job and that job, and if I make, 20% profit off this, and I work all year and I'll hire a couple of guys, I was a millionaire, before I had started. I thought this was going to be the greatest thing ever. And my father had a construction company in Prince Edward Island, and through kind of an odd, he really found a niche market in, it's about as niche as it can get. He ended up doing agricultural buildings for Dutch immigrant farmers.
Okay.
And because he was Dutch, and so he was kind of the only carpenter around who could translate. And all these Dutch guys, they all went to the same church, and they all knew each other. So he just got passed around from job to job and was busy all the time. And so he was, he would himself say that he did no advertising. It was all word of mouth. It was all just, there was no, I think he got some business cards printed one time.
Nice.
I think 30 years later, he still had, 245 of the 250 that he got printed. And, and so, of course, I grew up working with him, and, I saw how the, jobs were just offered to him.
Yeah.
And he just went from one thing to the next, and I just assumed that's the way it worked. You just started working, and, who knows where the jobs come from, but they always seem to come. And so anyway, it was not like that. I'm sure a lot of viewers have the same experience. Like it's not like that. You gotta hustle, and you have to, advertise and market yourself and find creative ways to get out there. And I had no preparation for that, no anticipation of that. And so we ended up having the first, probably I would say 2 or 3 years were really, really tough. Like that was back in 2011. And really tough, like just going from job to job and missing, just trying to get enough work for the guys. And I was young at the time. Like I was probably, I guess I was 20. I was 24 23 when I started the business. And I just didn't know. I didn't know a lot. I had been around carpentry,
Right.
but not. So so I made the classic mistake that a lot of business people make, I think, is I didn't specialize in anything. I just took on everything. I mean, everything from from painting to flooring to roofing to to new homes. Like we didn't. So I had a crew of guys who weren't specialized in anything, and I wasn't specialized in anything, and so. That's kind of how we got into the roofing. I ended up getting a couple of larger commercial contracts for roofing.
Okay.
And we were pushing it a little. I just noticed the profit margins were higher on roofing than for other things. And it was easy to price. And it was, you come in, you did the roof and you left. There was very little to deal with in terms of, client contractor relationship breakdown over like a longer project. You showed up, you did their house, maybe you came back in the morning to clean up some scaffolding, and you were on to the next place. And so it was, it worked out well. So we got some larger commercial contracts. And I ended up hiring, of course I had to hire more guys. So I ended up hiring about probably 5 or 6 guys for that project. And a few of them stayed around, and we got another large contract and hired a few more people, and a few of them stayed around. So in the end, then I was kind of cornered in terms of I had all these roofers, and it's certainly no knock against roofers because they were great guys, but they were not finished carpenters.
Right.
So the kinds of jobs that I could take on, kind of narrowed, and which actually worked out. It worked out really well. We enjoyed it. We enjoyed doing the work, and they were good at it, and we. So we made a name for ourselves doing that. And so that carried on for...
Had the niche thrust upon you then?
Pardon me?
Had the niche thrust upon you because you kind of had to stick with roofing because you have the guys.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So the crew I kind of fell into it in a way. I mean, we kind of angled ourselves toward it, and then we really fell into it. And that kind of brings up the... why we get into home building, because when I changed the name to Fresh Homes right around the time we were getting those larger contracts. Okay. And so it was always a bit of a weird thing in terms of, just when people would hear like Fresh Homes, they wouldn't hear, it's always, Jim's Roofing and East Side Roofing and West Side Roofing, and we didn't have that in our title, and it always kind of, I don't know if it affected us in terms of marketing, but it was always a reminder to me that roofing wasn't really my passion. Like it wasn't what I wanted to do. Gotcha. And that was one of the things that we kind of, when we started talking about moving to PEI, I really said it was a really definitive, clear break. We were moving into an entirely new, like geographical market. Yeah. And so we kind of made the decision then to change the niche, like I said, the business would be focused on. So that was, for that reason, actually, that was kind of helpful to move and to have that clear break, because I think a lot of businesses don't get the opportunity. Maybe it's just a lot harder to, in the same city where you've been working for 20 years or something, to really to turn it around because you're known as a particular type of business. So there's ways to do it, but that was our way. Just run away from our niche.
Yeah, I was going to say, so the one takeaway from this whole chat here tonight is if you're struggling with branding, just move.
Yeah, that's right. It's
easy. And figure it out again.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Okay. So then you kind of went through that journey. You landed in PEI. And that's really when I started getting to know you. Because I think we had a conversation around your marketing and decided it wasn't a good fit at that time. Um,
Yeah.
then we started following each other. I think that's right around the time I started following you on Facebook, and then kind of saw, how it morphed into your triathlete stuff as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I wasn't sure what you did at the time, because I remember following and thinking, like, I told my wife at one time, I think he makes websites for paving contractors. I think that's what he does. And she said, well, there's no way he could just work for paving contractors. And I said, well, but I think that's what he does.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I like he like I and then I and then I think she was looking up, and she was like, I think he works for a paving company maybe. And it's like, no, he's not like, he's just out on the job, but he's doing their webs, so we were anyway. But I was fascinated by just I think just your, I don't know, your optimism about diving into what you were doing, designing. I mean, obviously designing websites for all sorts of people and creating community, and
Yeah.
you among others, like you're certainly kind of an inspiration to think more seriously about a niche, and
Right.
and just
Right.
kind of narrowing in and developing a certain skill set and a certain set of practices. And so yeah, it was around that time that was when I'd been doing some thinking about triathlon. I had been thinking about it for a couple of years, and had done a smaller triathlon, I think, the year before. And it's one of those things, right, where everybody's planning to get in shape, and everybody's planning, right, to restore the former glory of our high school days when we used to run miles and miles. And so that's kind of when I started taking that more seriously. It was I guess the year before we moved, I had I entered a few races, and just kind of was starting to actually train a little bit for some things. Yeah.
Nice. So then, because I know you started up a page and you started posting, some, it was pretty regular posting of some quotes, and I think that you rebranded that page a little bit. Did you not?
Yeah, I wasn't. That's a funny thing. I wasn't sure what. Like I didn't really have a clear vision of it. I knew that I had been reading and listening to some people who were really, really inspirational, and really just had some very clear thoughts about just organizing self-development in terms of, with some, and there's thousands of them out there. But I read a couple, just some book, like different books, like the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I thought, this is so helpful for me. This is so, like, it's just so clear, and it's so straightforward. And I think I kind of understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
And yeah, I started posting some stuff, just different quotes that were kind of inspiring me along my journey. And I did that for a couple of months, and I was torn a little bit, because of course I was thinking a lot about consistency, being consistent, staying consistent. And I realized what I was posting a lot, and I wasn't doing a lot. I was posting really all winter and into the spring, and I felt a bit like a hypocrite. I was posting, and I was inspired. Like, I certainly wasn't sitting on the couch eating Doritos, falling down. I was interested and inspired, and I started to run, and I felt like I felt like a hypocrite. Like, I wasn't doing the
You're
work.
saying all these things, but not actually acting on them, kind of thing.
Yeah, I felt like I was kind of like projecting what I wanted to be, rather than kind of relaying what I had done and what my accomplishments were. And so I kind of backed off. I guess I backed off. I think in the spring and the summer, I thought, I really need to buckle down and start actually training and actually doing the things that I'm talking about doing. And there's so much. I think a lot of people do that. There's a lot of posing on, on social media, and there's so much, so much throwing quotes out that you're not living by. And I kind of felt like I was doing that. And I thought, that's not going to be the way I'm going to do it. So I still have, I still had the, I think the desire to inspire some people to do things, but I feel like, I can't inspire somebody to do something more than what I've done.
Right.
That was the way I kind of was thinking of it. So, so I think even at that point, I think that was even another stepping stone in terms of developing my own consistency.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of areas to work on, and and I think that was a turning point. Even I'm trying to remember exactly when that was. I think it was just before we moved into the place that we're in now, which was back in May, I think. And so I really kind of cranked it up a notch in terms of my own training and in terms of my own consistency. Right around then.
I love it. Yeah. So you kind of you switched the page from Rough Buffalo, I think, is what you were doing it before, which I actually thought was a pretty cool name. But now it's Daily Triathlete, I believe, is what you switched it to. Or did you make a separate page?
Yeah, I just renamed the page. I think that was part of, I got thinking about what this, the sort of thing that I'm after, and there's all sorts of inspirational, quotes and ideas and ways to kind of, I think, impact a general population.
Yeah. And
I was in triathlon is really where I was interested in, and really the area that I would like to develop in my own life. Yeah. And so I've built kind of a community around, just in my own personal relationships, around different people who do triathlon. I had never, I shouldn't say I never heard of the sport. I'd heard of it, but to get acquainted with triathlon, it's, I just love it. Like it is such a, when you compare, triathlon with other sports, and I used to play lots of sports, so I'm certainly not poo-pooing any of them, but the idea of, when you play a game of soccer, like soccer is considered, a high cardio sport. Like you're essentially jogging for 90 minutes with intermittent, running at the top, at top speed, all the while performing, agile maneuvers and stuff. And so, but it's a high cardio sport. But with like triathlon, to do the, at the full distance triathlons, or the Ironmans, as most people know them, the world record Ironman completion time is just under 8 hours. That's and crazy. For an amateur, or maybe a beginner Ironman, the completion time is going to be anywhere from like 12 to 16 hours of, like moderate to high intensity cardio. Yeah. And so just that idea really kind of caught my attention. I just thought that's what I want to do. That is the thing.
I love that.
To be able to do that. So
my cousin, you may know him since the Maritimes is pretty close knit. Do you know Jesse English? He's here in New Brunswick. He's recently moved out west, but he's pretty active in the community here locally. Okay,
I know another. There's another Jesse that I know, but it's not. He's from the island.
Gotcha. But no. So you kind of had this thought that this is what you wanted to focus in on. You kind of pivoted from, okay, I'm not going to be a poser anymore. I'm going to actually inspire people by my actions. Right. And what kind of made that click in your mind? It's like, okay, I'm going to run every day, because that's what you're doing currently, and you're on day 136, I believe it was today. And you had us all thinking that you ran outside, but really it was a treadmill.
Oh yeah, today. No, I've been running. I'd started running. I didn't have when I first started, running is obviously the easiest to do. You just need a pair of shoes and, some, barely appropriate clothing, and, and you're off to the races. So I had done a bit of running in New Brunswick, and I had an exercise bike for cycling, which wasn't really the thing. So I was, but I was training on the bike and training as far as running goes, and I was at the pool a bit. And we moved to PEI. Of course, when COVID happened, the pools were all shut down, and I didn't even have a road bike in the spring, and so I remember the very first time I decided, I thought I need to get back. I hadn't really run much over the winter while we were building the house, and I thought, I really need to get back into this. And I remember going out and running for the first time in this was probably maybe 4 or 5 months. It was in March. I remember I went out and ran, and I figured on Google Maps somewhere it was about 5 kilometers. And I thought, I can run that. That's no problem. And I remember I get back, and anyways, I didn't puke, but it was everything. I was just holding it back because we were living at my parents' place while we were building the house, and they're pretty picky about their driveway. So I was trying to hold it in, and anyway, so I did that, and I thought, that was the worst, and I felt awful. And I think it was maybe 2 weeks later on a Sunday afternoon, I thought, I really need to. I need to try again, because. Anyways, and it wasn't much better, but it was a little better. And I started running, every maybe 2 or 3 days. I'd go out for a little run in the morning.
Yep.
And so that ended up, that was kind of all I was doing, just running a couple of kilometers, maybe between 4, 5, 6 kilometers a day, or every maybe 2 or 3 days. And so I started doing that consistently, and just having these thoughts about consistency, it started to make a difference.
Mm-hmm. And
I realized it wasn't about the intensity. It wasn't about how fast I went. And it wasn't about the, how I didn't even, and that's the funny thing. It's not about how fast or how hard I went. And it wasn't about even how often I went. It was just that I did it consistently.
Right.
I started realizing, it felt like I wasn't going fast enough. It felt like I wasn't going often enough. And I realized, it was about every third day. And I realized, I am making progress.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit of a numbers guy. I was terrible at math, but I like, simple things. I was terrible at
numbers. Sure.
Yeah. And so I started kind of thinking, I kind of started to kind of graph my progress, and I realized, if I keep going at this pace, I can make some real progress. I can make some real distances. And, before I remember running in a 10-kilometer race in St. John. That was in 2019. And I remember my sister had talked me into doing a 10K, and so we did that. And I remember looking at the guys doing the half marathons. That's bananas. 21.1 kilometers. That's ridiculous, And then the guys doing the marathons of 42.2K races, and I knew of a thing called ultra marathons, longer than a regular marathon, and it just seemed totally out of reach. And so I set the goal. I remember that was very early in the spring. I set the goal. I'm going to run a marathon this year, 2020. I'm going to do that. And so we moved into our new place, and we're just about 5 kilometers from the national park. So there's a beautiful, probably, 7 or 8. Well, I guess it's longer than that, really. It's, it's probably 12 or 13 miles of straight level road by the beach. And there's an 8-foot paved sidewalk beside it.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's super safe to bike out there. And so I ended up getting a road bike, and and started biking. So I started almost every morning. I was going out doing biking or running, and I probably every second day, we'll say, to not be a poser, right? I think it was, but every second day I would run or bike, and then sometimes on the weekends I started comboing them, and I was really looking for a race, but of course, 2020 being,
they all got wiped off the map.
There were no races, so. So then I'm making up my own races by myself, out. I didn't do a lot of swimming, but it was a lot of biking and a lot of running. And I remember running one day. I remember exactly where I was in the road as I'm running along. It was on September 20. It was September 26th. And I remember saying, I ran a couple of days ago. I really need to start. I wonder if I could run more often. And I had the idea, like, I'll just run I wonder if you could run every day for a whole year. I wonder if you could do that. And I remember there was I was running by a farm on a road. It's not far from here. I run by it all the time now. And I remember thinking, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna run at least 5 kilometers every day. And I'm a bit impetuous in terms of commitments that I set. And I remember I went home, and I was, I think I had I had the Strava on my phone on, and so I posted a picture, and I remember just on the spur of the moment, I said, like, day 1 of 365, and I'm gonna, and I remember like, I posted it, and I thought, like, wow, that's pretty cool, and then. And there was a couple of people that had been kind of, just friends that had been following, and they kind of said, like, wow, that's amazing. You're going to, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do that. No problem. Just crank 365 runs out. No problem. And I remember over the course of the next, like, it was no problem to run the next day. It was no problem. And a couple of days in, I remember thinking, what did I sign up for?
Right.
All these people, like, everybody knows now that I'm doing this, and I remember asking people. How many days they thought I could get, out of the 365.
Yeah.
And I remember one of my friends who he works out quite a bit too. I remember he said. No, you can. What do you say? 325 at a 365. I remember thinking, like, how dare you? Like,
real supportive.
Yeah. And so it's funny how you remember those little things. I remember you predicted 400 out of 365.
Yeah, man.
So I don't know if I can do that, but see what I can do for you, Lewis.
I'm counting on you.
Yeah, that's
My
right.
whole world is hanging on this thread.
Shoot, last couple of days are going to be intense.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I made that commitment, and you know what? It's amazing what it does to it seems like it turns something on when you're maybe it's being forced to be consistent, but just being consistent in in running has spilled over into other areas, into a lot of other areas, and I never expected that to happen. I basically thought that I was going to, hit, most days and maybe miss a day or two here or there, and if you went to bed late, and it's funny how your brain, when you put that, I don't even know what to call it, when you put that carrot or that goal out in front, then all of a sudden I guess the easiest way to say it is that you find ways to make it happen.
To make it, yeah. Because I've seen you do some midnight runs, and then you'll roll right over and do one at 1 and say, "There, I got the run for the next day done."
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember doing that. Yeah, running along and thinking, well, if I just go, all I have to do is run for add an extra 20 minutes on here, and then I can do tomorrow's run today, and whatever. Yeah, do like a 10-kilometer run at midnight, and well, you get kind of creative doing them, and it's funny too. Running my own business, yourself. I'm sure there's times when you have some freedom, and times when you're certainly restricted by the business. But I definitely found that if I just decided that in the morning I was running 5 or 10 kilometers, whatever I was going to run, it just happened.
Yeah.
Once you decided, once you're doing it, it's funny how the other things in your day, like just, I don't know, move out of the way.
Right.
Things rearrange themselves to get that done. And it seems counterintuitive. It seems like you have to schedule it. And if you put one thing in the schedule, you got to take another thing out of the schedule.
Right. Well, you can just put more, and they just all kind of fill in, right?
Sometimes that's how that works. And so when you just have something important, I refer to it to my wife. I refer to it as dropping an anvil in your schedule. and things clear out.
Right.
And really what I find in those days is that I just don't waste as much time because I've got more to do. And it makes you really kind of, it's a sobering thought to realize how much time you do waste, because you don't seem to get less done. You just seem to do all the things you have to do a little more efficiently. And so that's been, so in terms of getting it done, that's been a big thing. But in terms of other areas of my life, I think it gives you the confidence. It gives you a vote for your own consistency, right? You become, I think you see yourself as a consistent person. And I think the this idea of you are the way you think. I would turn that around. I think the reality is more like you think the way that you are, and so your thoughts. I know you're supposed to guide your actions by your thoughts, and certainly in some sense that's true. But when you do something, right? It's like a vote in that ballot box for the candidate of consistency.
The action moving you forward to the goal that you're setting.
Exactly, and you begin to, like, I know it's kind of a cheesy word to, or cheesy way to say, like, you got to believe in yourself. But when you actually, when you act on certain commitments, and let's say you do that for 7 days in a row, then it's like, it's not just like, well, I made the decision 7 days in a row. You think, well, I'm a runner now. I'm a consistent runner. I'm a consistent person.
Yeah.
I can maintain consistency. And so when another area of life comes up, one thing that's been really, really, probably the most meaningful area where consistency has spilled over is with mentoring some young guys at our church.
Nice.
And I had said to my wife for years, in Fredericton, there was a number of guys that I was close with, and I thought, I really should spend some more time with them. I really should. And it went on for like years. And of course, we had kids, and there's all kinds of reasons not to. But I still had kids, and there's still reasons not to. But now it's like, well, I'm a consistent person, so I can choose to do it.
Drop another anvil in your schedule, right?
Exactly. And so I can do it again. And all of a sudden, well, here I am. I've picked a night every week for the last, like 7 weeks, and I can just, what's the 8th week? That's what I do now.
Right.
And so I think that idea of consistency has, I've just learned that it's far more than consistency in working out, running. It's applicable in all areas. And so I've started to say, consistency in anything is everything. And I think if you're struggling in any area of life, you could probably think of an example where that's not the case, but I would say in any area, the problem is a lack of consistency.
I can see that looking back on, the past year, learning where my blind spots are as a business owner, as a human. Consistency, when I'm not consistent, that's when I'm not firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, and it's back to the math that I like to do. Like, my sister read. She posts at the end of every year. She posts a reading list of all the books that she's read over the last year. And so I think last year, and both of my sisters do this. And I think they both read over 100 books last year.
Wow.
Which is bananas, right? Like 100 books. Anyway, so
I'm on. My goal is 40 between audio and physical. That's something I'm trying to be consistent in this year. I am being consistent in this 10 pages at least of a book a day.
Yeah, because because when you do the math, like a book, like the average book, if you assume the average book has 300 pages, and then and people read generally a page a minute. And so it should, on average, take about 5 hours to finish a book. If you're reading a page a minute, right? It's so 60 pages an hour, 5 hours to finish the book. So if you read a half an hour a night, right, that's a book every 10 days.
Yeah.
So over the course of the year, you're at 36 books.
It's wild. It's wild.
but when you and so when you when I say it like that, even to myself, it's like, whoa, wow, like,
That's
36
not that hard.
books. Like, how high? Like, what's a stack of 36 books? Like, that almost comes up to your waist, doesn't it?
Right.
And you think if you could really be careful about curating what books you read, I mean, you'd have to be a different person, wouldn't you? And wasn't that how Ty Lopez got the that was his first viral video, right? Him looking at the bookshelf saying the more you learn, the more you earn, but just doing that little bit of math, it really kind of it gives you a fresh perspective rather than trying to, I read a book a while ago, I don't know, but when you like you say, reading 10 pages a day or whatever it is, and that's the same in learning. I've been running just since the winter's kind of set in and the roads most of my runs are early in the morning, and so I get outside when I can, but if it's too early, like the shoulders are narrow and PEI drivers are horrendous, and so
They're all looking at the scenery.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, driving our potato mobiles around. But so I've been running inside, and so I'm trying to take advantage of you put your phone or whatever on the treadmill and you're watching, and it's easy to watch just mindless, trash while you're, just funny videos and stuff. And I realized a while ago, I thought this is a perfect opportunity to take like 30 to 45 minutes a day and, and learn and advance. And so I've been trying to watch building videos in line with my business. And so that's been super helpful to be educating every day, getting those videos. But again, it's that consistency of just once you start to do it, and you watch 45 minutes of videos a day or half an hour even, at the end of the year, like it's weeks and weeks of videos watched. So thinking of it that way has been really encouraging to continue on in that, in that consistency.
Here's a stat. You've probably already figured this out, but for the listeners, if you do something for an hour every day, by the end of the year, you've worked the equivalent of 9 40-hour weeks on that one thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've done math like that before. It's crazy.
That's 2 and a bit months of work. That's crazy, right? So like the little things, that mindless show that you're watching, for example, that you just said there, like are you throwing away 2 months of like work weeks? Like that's or to flip it, what could you be doing? How could you be gaining? Like most of us have 20 minutes a day that we can carve out and throw an anvil in our schedule. And that's something that's been a mindset shift for me lately. And truthfully, watching you, it's like 130 some odd days. Like that's a long time. That's a long time to be doing something, right? But watching what you're doing, I'm reading a book called The Slight Edge. I think you would enjoy it because it talks a lot about exactly what you're doing. Doing something consistently is so much better than sprinting every week, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of like I've heard Simon Sinek gives the example of going to the gym. If you go to the gym if you've never gone or don't go very often, you just go one day for 9 hours and lift weights for 9 hours. You're just like, it's of no benefit. You're just going to blow your body up. And he gives the example of, or the other day, well, of course, he says, what if you go for like half an hour a day and do some target, or even an hour, like over a month, you're going to be way further ahead. He talked about flossing your teeth too. And how most of us, it's like, oh shoot, I got to be in the dentist this afternoon, and we're flossing away. And of course, my sister actually used to work as a dental hygienist, and she said people would come in and they'd have their gums would be bleeding, and you're like, you're not flossing. Like, no, like I just flossed a bit ago. You're like, yeah, for the first time. But a lot of us just treat it that way, right? Like it's all
treat life like that.
Right, it's all intensity over consistency, but it's it's the other way. I think it's consistency over intensity.
Yeah, I've been the flosser, the last minute flosser in a lot of areas of my life, and so I think you can relate to this too. Being a business owner, it exposes your weaknesses and your blind spots, and if you're going to keep providing for your family, you've got to be performing at a level that is certainly a lot different than where I used to perform. And so consistency is, being consistent with the consistency is something that I'm learning and embracing, and I've seen results. But to take it another level, running 5 kilometers a day, that's going to be physical, mental. Have you and Jana talked about how is it with the family? How is it with has she noticed changes in you, your attitude, things like that?
Yeah, we I think in a lot of ways it's been growing for a while. We've certainly had our struggles in our marriage, and I think things have been for the last number of years. Things have really, there was a couple of defining points years ago that really kind of took our marriage in a different direction, and doing this is one thing. I think in terms, maybe more so for my relationship with my kids, has been well, in the first place. I remember one time I was running with my daughter up to the bus stop. This was a couple of years ago, and I remember like running, like as a, I don't know, I would have been like a 31 years old, and running to the bus stop, and I remember feeling like just sucking wind. I'm only running like 200 meters up the road, and I think I was chasing or playing tag or something, and so just that's maybe a very basic level, but just having the energy to be with kids and to be consistently working out and consistently far more healthy, that has made a huge difference. And just with, even like we play a game, and we were playing a game today where I'm give part of it is I'm giving them a horse ride, and I'm realizing that they're not little anymore. Like Marin is 9 and she's like over 60 pounds, and
Wow.
Marin is like she's 3 and like 30 pounds. So I'm trying to so I'm just thinking like years ago I wouldn't have been able to do a push up with I did use my knees a little bit too, like a girl, but of course, like I made fun of that. But so I'm doing this push up thinking, man, oh man, like could you imagine if I wasn't in shape? Like what, like the moments that you'd lose out on with your kids. So I think whatever job you're in, I think your physical health is more than just it's more than just being able to run a race or to be able to to run. Like it enhances everything else. It's kind of similar to your diet, but having a healthy body. So that's been really good with my kids, I think, in that way, and being able to kind of keep up, and not just to do physical things with them, but I think just to have the how would you even say that? To be able to be present with them, to have the energy to be present.
To be right there with them.
Anybody who's a father knows there's times when you just want to check out, and you just want to like stay in the bathroom a little longer, stay outside a little longer. Like you just don't, it's hard to engage. And I think you need that energy for it. So it's been really helpful in that way, just to be able to be present and to be able to engage and to do all those things that you want to be able to do as a father with your kids. So I think that would be the biggest, in terms of our family life, that's been the biggest contribution of my consistency. There have been other areas as well in terms of different things that we're working on in terms of, I am not by nature an organized person, but being consistent has encouraged me to set a bit more of a schedule and to line up like what we're doing to plan. We're trying to start to plan our weeks together, and just having that mindset of consistency and putting order in place. It's been a bit of a help, and I think I can see that on the horizon being something that we're gonna see some real gains in.
Soon it's gonna be Travis the time blocker.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe so. That's not how I roll though too often.
I love it. Well, Travis, this has been awesome. It's been cool to kind of we've kind of chatted over social media. Here and there, messaged each other and interacted on each other's posts, but to kind of pull back the covers a little bit has been really cool. I always like to ask people at the end of an interview, what's the What's one thing you would leave people with? One nugget that you would leave people with, whether it's in business and in life and consistency, that you would kind of leave people with and kind of wrap up with?
Yeah, one thing that has really struck me about the idea of consistency and being consistent, and I'll just read just a little something. I was thinking about this the other day, and it's in it's just it's just a quote from the Bible, and it's talking about a specific context, but it's talking about delighting in the law of the Lord. But it likens somebody who does that to a tree. And it says, it's Psalm 1 verse 3. It says, "He's like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. In all that he does, he prospers." And I think that can be applied broadly. That idea of being a tree planted planted right beside the water. And I thought that's kind of the vision that I want to have for my life in a general sense, to be somebody who's consistently feeding, consistently doing, consistently, taking in the right nutrients, the right inputs. And it gives the reason, why is that, right? It says it yields its fruit in its season. That's what a tree does. I mean, it yields fruit. It doesn't yield fruit all year long, every day, right? But in the season that it's needed. And so I feel like my consistency in all areas, it's often not needed of you, right? Like as a business owner, it's often not needed to come through in a pinch, right? Most days you're just working away. Same with your family. Like most days, it doesn't really matter in a way if you're there or not.
Right.
Most friendships, you see people every now and again, but there are those seasons where that fruit is required. And that's, I think, where consistency really plays its hand. And
man, I love that.
Yeah. So I think if I could leave people with one thing, that idea of being consistent, it's not for today, but that season will come when it will be required of you. And there's no prep time, right? When that comes. Right.
You could talk your teeth before the dentist.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So I think that's what I've learned about consistency. I think that's really important.
That's huge. I appreciate that. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you here. And I know that there's some nuggets in here that people can take away, and kind of, I always like to humanize the people that I follow and do that so that other people can see, Travis is a real person just like the rest of us, right? He struggles with that consistency. People can find you. I'll drop links to your Facebook page as well, so they can kind of follow along there. Sure. It's Daily Triathlete. Yep. Daily Triathlete on Instagram and Facebook, correct?
Instagram and Facebook, yeah. That's where I am most of the time, yeah.
Yeah, so give Travis a follow there. Be inspired to start some consistency of your own, people. And Travis, once again, it was an absolute pleasure. We'll wrap up off air here, but I thank you so much.
All right, appreciate it very much, Lewis. Yeah, this was great. We'll have to do it again.
Awesome, we will for sure.